The 1980s were a time of bold ideas, bigger hair, and an unapologetic sense of excess. For car enthusiasts, it was a golden era, a time when manufacturers weren't afraid to take risks, and no car exemplifies that spirit better than the Renault 5 Turbo. Born from the need to dominate rally stages and forged with a level of creativity that bordered on madness, the Renault 5 Turbo is a car that refuses to be forgotten. Let's take a deep dive into the story of this pocket rocket, a machine that defied convention and rewrote the rulebook on what a hot hatch could be. To understand the Renault 5 Turbo, we need to rewind to the late 1970s. Renault, like many manufacturers of the time, had its eyes set on motorsport glory. The World Rally Championship was growing in prestige, and cars like the Lancia Stratos were proving that specialized, purpose-built machines could dominate the stages. Renault, traditionally known for practical and sensible cars, wanted a slice of the action. But rather than creating something entirely new, they looked to their popular Renault 5 Super Mini as a starting point. It was a small, lightweight, and nimble car, a perfect foundation for something truly special. The plan? Take the humble Renault 5 and transform it into a mid-engined, rear-wheel drive rally monster. Yes, mid-engined, rear-wheel drive. From a car that started life as an everyday commuter. Bold doesn't even begin to describe it. The man behind this wild idea was none other than John Terramorsi, Renault's vice president of production. Terramorsi envisioned a car that could not only compete on the rally stages, but also capture the imagination of enthusiasts around the world. Renault's engineers got to work, and what they produced wasn't just a car, it was an engineering marvel. The transformation began by ripping out the back seats and moving the engine to where they once were. Gone was the front-mounted, economy-focused powertrain, and in its place was a turbocharged 1.4-liter four-cylinder engine sourced from the Renault 5 Alpine. This little powerhouse was reworked to produce an impressive 160 horsepower, an astronomical figure for a car that weighed just a little over 900 kilograms, or about 2,000 pounds. This was no ordinary Renault 5. To accommodate the mid-engine layout, the chassis had to be extensively modified. The rear track was widened significantly, and huge, flared wheel arches were added to house wider tires. These arches, along with the aggressive front fascia and massive air intakes, gave the Renault 5 Turbo a look that screamed performance. It was as if the car had hit the gym, bulked up, and was now ready to take on anything in its path. Inside, it was all business. The stripped-out interior was designed with one purpose in mind: to go fast. There was no need for luxury or comfort here. What you got instead were bucket seats, a racing-inspired dashboard, and a gear lever perfectly positioned for quick shifts. If you were lucky enough to get your hands on one, you were reminded at every turn that this was a car meant to be driven, not pampered. In 1980, the Renault 5 Turbo made its debut, and it caused an absolute sensation. Here was a small hatchback that could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 6 seconds, a time that put it in the same league as far more expensive sports cars. And thanks to its mid-engine layout and rear-wheel drive configuration, it handled like a dream. The car was agile, sharp, and responsive, with a tendency to oversteer that kept drivers on their toes. It was exhilarating, challenging, and utterly addictive. But while the road car was incredible, the real story of the Renault 5 Turbo was written on the rally stages. Homologation rules required Renault to build at least 400 road-going versions of the car to qualify for Group 4 rallying, and once those were completed, the company turned its attention to creating the competition versions. The Renault 5 Turbo quickly proved its worth, winning its first major rally, the 1981 Monte Carlo Rally, with John Ragnati behind the wheel. This victory cemented the Renault 5 Turbo's reputation as a serious contender. It was fast, nimble, and capable of taking on the toughest terrain with ease. But more than that, it had character. It was a car that looked and sounded like nothing else on the stages, and it became a fan favorite almost overnight. Of course, the rallying world was changing rapidly in the early 1980s. Group B regulations were introduced, and manufacturers began building ever more extreme machines. Renault followed suit, developing the 5 Turbo into the Turbo 2. While the original Turbo featured lightweight aluminum panels and a bespoke interior, the Turbo 2 used more conventional materials to reduce costs. This made the car slightly heavier, but also more accessible, allowing more enthusiasts to get their hands on one. And then there were the special editions. Over the years, Renault released a number of limited production variants of the 5 Turbo, each more extreme than the last. There was the Turbo Maxi, built for Group B competition, which boasted wider tracks, more power, and an even more aggressive appearance. And then there were the road-going specials, rare, sought-after machines that remain the stuff of dreams for collectors today. The Renault 5 Turbo's rallying career eventually came to an end, as the rise of four-wheel drive systems made rear-wheel drive cars less competitive. But its impact on the world of motorsport and car culture as a whole cannot be overstated. It showed that even a humble hatchback could be transformed into something extraordinary, and it inspired a generation of hot hatches that followed in its tire tracks. Today, the Renault 5 Turbo is a bona fide icon. It's a car that represents a moment in time when anything seemed possible, when manufacturers weren't afraid to take risks and push boundaries. Whether you see one at a car show, on a rally stage, or in a private collection, it never fails to turn heads and spark conversations. And let's not forget the driving experience. By modern standards, the Renault 5 Turbo might seem raw, unrefined, even a little intimidating, but that's exactly what makes it special. It's a car that demands respect, a car that rewards skill and bravery in equal measure. Behind the wheel, you feel connected to the machine in a way that few modern cars can replicate. Every corner is an event, every straight a chance to unleash that glorious turbocharged power. It's the kind of car that reminds you why you fell in love with driving in the first place. So here's to the Renault 5 Turbo, a car that dared to be different, that challenged convention, and that left an indelible mark on the world of performance cars. It's more than just a machine. It's a legend, a piece of automotive history, and a reminder that sometimes the craziest ideas are the ones that make the biggest impact. The Renault 5 Turbo, a rally hero, a road icon, a true original.